With Game of Thrones coming to an end, the people over at The Take have started a collaboration with a few different video analysts on YouTube talking about the show's legacy. Regardless of how you might feel about the way the show is ending or what arcs you're disappointed in or in favor of, we can all agree that we would not be here if it weren't for an original love for this story. So, in this series, we're all reflecting on our favorite episodes of the show. However, I would like to go back to the episode that lives as the most significant turning point for me in the series. This was the moment when I realized I was watching something truly special and not just another TV show. This episode for me was in the very first season, episode 6, titled A Golden Crown. This particular part of the show was the first time we really see expectations subverted, in a good way, and how unique the show is in terms of what is important to the story. We learn more about the deep relationships and politics, we finally unravel the mystery surrounding Jon Arryn's death, and most importantly, we are shown the brutal consequences of characters' actions. I'm Mr. Mandrake, and I'd like to welcome you to my garden. This is my first video essay on this channel, and if it goes well, I'll be doing them
Forever! 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 Forever!
First, a quick summary of this episode. Bran dreams once more of the three-eyed raven, and watches as it flies into the crypts at Winterfell. Bran goes riding under the supervision of Robb and Theon as they discuss the goings-on in the south and the inevitability of war. They encounter the wildlings, kill all of them but Osha, Robb reminds Theon that he's not a Stark, and everyone moves on with their lives. Well, everyone but the wildlings. Tyrion wakes up in his sky cell to the surprise that it is, in fact, a sky cell. He eventually persuades the turnkey, Mord, to let him speak before the lords and ladies of the Eyrie and confess his crimes. Once he has had his little joke, he sets about turning the audience to his favor. He demands a trial by combat, insisting that his brother Jaime is his champion for the fight. Lady Lysa demands that the trial take place that day, so Tyrion is forced to scrape the bottom of the barrel in the form of Bronn. Bronn and Ser Vardis of the Vale duke it out, and through some cutthroaty moves and subtle mockery, Bronn emerges triumphant, displaying that very Game of Thrones idea that the honorable path is not necessarily the path to victory. Sansa throws some shade at her septa before being interrupted by an impromptu visit from Prince Joffrey. Sansa, still being very much in the realm of early Season 1 Sansa, fawns over Joffrey in the usual manner. The prince proceeds to apologize for his actions on the King's Road to his lady in the manner befitting an honorable man. And whether you believed it or not at the time, Sansa certainly did. Ned wakes in his bed in the Hand's chamber to the presence of King Robert and Queen Cersei. Robert demands that the Lannisters and Starks make peace, starting with Ned telling Catelyn to release Tyrion. This whole argument sets in motion the rest of the conflict for the next several episodes. Robert reinforces his desire to have Daenerys Targaryen killed. Robert goes on his hunt with Renly, Ser Barristan, and Lancel Lannister. Cersei is pushed to her breaking point with Robert, and Ned has his choices laid out before him. Avenge the attack on his house and his son by starting a war with the Lannisters, condemning his friendship with Robert in the process, or remain loyal to Robert and ignore what the Lannisters have done to him up until this point. Later, in the throne room, Ned presides over the daily matters of the kingdom. He learns that Gregor Clegane, the Mountain, has raided several villages in the Riverlands in the name of House Lannister. Ned takes his first real action in the war. He recruits a soon-to-be recast Beric Dondarrion and sends him to slay the Mountain in the name of the king. He also demands that Lord Tywin Lannister come forth to the capital to answer for the crimes of his bannermen. After the events of the day have passed, Ned tells Sansa and Arya that they are going to be sent back to Winterfell. During their many protests, Sansa unknowingly gives her father the truth that he originally came to search for.
He'll be the greatest king that ever was, a golden lion, and I'll give him sons with beautiful blonde hair.
The lion's not his sigil, idiot. He's a stag like his father.
He is not. He's nothing like that old drunk king.
Finally, Ned realizes the truth that Jon Arryn died for. Joffrey, Myrcella, and Tommen are not Baratheons as the realm believes, but rather products of an incestuous relationship between Queen Cersei and Jaime Lannister. And, in a cool way, we get the first instance of this episode's title, a golden crown. However, the main reason why this episode is my favorite is the story of Daenerys Targaryen. This whole episode is building to the climax that is the death of Viserys. Every single scene in Essos in this episode in some way furthers the idea that Daenerys will live and her older brother will die. The first time we see her in this episode, we see her alone in her tent, contemplating the use of her dragon eggs. We see Dany taking one of them, which looks like Drogon's egg, and placing it on hot coals for a time. For the first 5 episodes, we have been wondering what might be going on with these eggs and how they might affect Dany's story. The more astute among you at this time might realize that dragon eggs might eventually hatch into, bear with me here, actual living dragons. Her servant, Irri, walks in just as Dany is taking the egg back into her hands.
Khaleesi!
You're hurt.
This seemingly small scene plays a very important part later on. This whole episode for Dany is about her past, her future, and her relationship with her brother. Viserys had always thought of himself as the last dragon, always looking for a way to connive his way back to his ancestral seat of power. Viserys has always had a short fuse, and Dany took to calling his fits of rage waking the dragon. By the end of this episode, we will find out who the true last dragon is. Dany is in the middle of a Dothraki ritual. She must eat a whole horse heart, and if she is successful, she will be a true member of the Khalasar, a Khaleesi worthy of following. Viserys and Jorah watch her, with Jorah translating for Viserys. We get a look at the prophecy of the stallion that will mount the world as Dany, with only a little difficulty, manages to finish eating the whole heart. Dany names her unborn son Rhaego, and Drogo looks on as his love embraces her new life. Dany has gained the respect of the Dothraki. Viserys is caught trying to steal away with the 3 dragon eggs in tow. He confesses that even though he is the true king of Westeros, the last dragon, he has never been given an ounce of what he just saw in that tent.
I'm the last hope of a dynasty, Mormont. The greatest dynasty this world has ever seen on my shoulders since I was 5 years old. And no one has ever given me what they gave to her in that tent. Never. Not a piece of it.
Jorah manages to stop him from stealing the eggs and lets a crestfallen, rage-filled Viserys go free. In the last part of the episode, we get Viserys' final confrontation with Dany and the Dothraki. Now, quite drunk, our hero enters the tent of Khal Drogo with a sword at his belt, something that is a big no-no in Vaes Dothrak. Now, we all know how this ends. Viserys wants Drogo's armies and, more importantly, his crown. Drogo promises a gold crown, but Viserys does not know how literally he is going to get what he wants. The episode ends with Viserys getting all hot and bothered, and Dany uttering the chilling words,
He was no dragon. Fire cannot kill a dragon.
So why is this my favorite episode of Thrones? I'm glad you asked, you saucy minx. Well, this was the first time that the idea of actions having consequences really hit home for me. Many shows would have kept Viserys around for at least the whole season, if not more, and would constantly tease the death of such a character. When I first watched these episodes, I thought that he was going to be Dany's main antagonist for at least the first season, and was surprised at how unceremoniously he was killed in this episode. which is barely halfway through Season 1. Upon rewatching this episode, it is really satisfying to see how much they set up this final conflict with the Targaryen prince. The whole episode is about whether Dany can break the chains of her past which were forged by her brother. And by the end, we have our answer. The heat from the egg did not burn Dany's fingers. Instead of worshipping Viserys, the Dothraki embraced Daenerys as their Khaleesi, and fire cannot kill a dragon. All of this sets up the eventual ritual that takes place in the final part of the season, which finally births the 3 dragons and rebirths Dany as the last dragon and the one true ruler of Westeros. At least until Jon is revealed as a Targaryen and Dany goes a little bit off the rails. The structure of this episode and the plot points it decides to hit is very clever and extremely important in storytelling and television. While there are other things going on in this episode, the bulk of the story and conflict is focused on Daenerys coming into her own, culminating in the death of Viserys, and Ned Stark navigating the politics of Westeros, culminating in his understanding of the truth about Joffrey's parentage. Both of these conflicts are very obviously tied to the theme of the episode, which I would argue is what Varys says in a later episode in Season 2.
Power resides where men believe it resides.
It doesn't matter that the laws of man say that Viserys is the ruler of the 7 kingdoms, because the Dothraki believe in Daenerys. It doesn't matter that Joffrey and his siblings are really Lannisters and not Baratheons, because the people of the 7 kingdoms believe that they are legitimate heirs. And of course, these 2 stories are directly tied to the title of the episode itself. More importantly, each plotline has its own set of established conflicts and resolutions, rather than building into nothing and ending on a cliffhanger so we have to tune in to next week's episode. Ned starts the episode in an argument with Robert Baratheon about the brewing conflict between the Starks and Lannisters. Robert makes it clear to Ned that he must choose a side. Ned has to choose between 2 ideals he holds dear: his loyalty to Robert or justice for his family. So the dramatic question for him in this episode becomes, will Ned Stark choose loyalty or justice? The dramatic question in Daenerys' story is a bit more simple, but still quite effective. Will Daenerys take charge of her life? By the end of this episode, both questions are answered in this smaller conflict in a larger story. Ned chooses justice, and Daenerys makes the first decision of her life. We're left wanting more because things have actually happened in a meaningful and progressive nature, not because we were given a cheap cliffhanger at the end of the episode. Before I close this video, I want to thank everyone over at The Take for starting this collaboration and giving dumb schmoes like me the chance to be a part of something, even though none of you would have known about me before this video. If you like this video and want to see more in the future, hit that like button and subscribe. I love Game of Thrones, and I can't wait to see this last episode and see how this epic story ends. Oh wait, it's tonight. Oh shit! Bye everyone, I gotta go. The episode's on tonight. I gotta go.